the Figment Collective Podcast.
This podcast is for a mature audience. Welcome to the Collective.
Well, welcome back once more to Figment Collective Production Podcast and our YouTube video. The ritual is complete, and I have summoned a Milo.
Hello.
I don't know what I did this time to summon a Milo. I think it was the bones. all those chicken bones. Ugh. But today we're going to talk about something a little bit different, a little something closer to home when it comes to our home games. And that would be Milo's Changeling the Lost Arcadia by Day. We've had several questions about how we've changed things up, how she has reinvented the game in various ways. So Milo, how you feeling?
Nervous. Always nervous.
Why you nervous? It's just me.
Because I'm always nervous. Fine.
So, you didn't start by playing Changeling the Lost. You started by playing Vampire the Masquerade, right?
Technically, I started by playing D&D, but yes, for World of Darkness, Chronicles of Darkness, it was Vampire the Masquerade.
And how did you discover Changeling the Lost? Is it just by reading the fluff for Vampire and finding there was furry stuff, and then going with that, or just delving deeper into the lore?
There was actually a discussion that happened about potentially wanting to run a game or a one-shot for the VTM, as I tended to be with D&D a go-to DM. I was always the person that got asked to run the games for others. And so when I was introduced to VTM, a bunch of people were like, you should run a game, or, there was potential interest in me running some kind of Vampire the Masquerade game. And it was another friend who basically said that I might like Changeling and essentially let me borrow all the books.
And what drew you to Changing the Lost and not Changing the Dreaming?
Changing the Lost is a much, much darker fairy tale. It was actually pitched that way, as Dreaming seems a little more whimsical, a little more lighthearted. Changeling the Lost is the darkest parts of the fairy tales, and I absolutely love the original lore and legends. I love the original Grimm fairy tales, where the sisters cut their feet off to fit into the glass slippers, and the wolf's stomach gets cut open and filled with stones, and he gets dumped in a lake. I love those.
Obviously Red Riding Hood, and the other one you mentioned there, I'm trying to think off the top of my head because fairy tales, it's been a long time since I've read any or listened to any. Cinderella, not Cinderella. Is it Cinderella?
Which one?
Cinderella, where the sisters cut their toes off.
Yes.
Glass slippers.
They cut their toes and their heels off to fit them into the glass slippers. That is Cinderella.
Yes, because all princes want is a glass slipper filled with blood.
But it was the birds. It was the birds of her dead mother that warned the prince to look at the shoes.
I didn't know that. That's horrifying. the birds of her dead mother.
Mm-hmm.
I mean.
Yep. A tree sprouted on her mother's grave, and birds came out of it. So those birds would warn the prince that the slipper. They'd say, "Look down, see the blood. She is not your bride to be."
I mean, I could probably name me some princes at a VTM that would definitely fill a slipper full of blood and drink it, but they're just fancy. And Changeling the Lost hasn't had much of a following over the years. It hasn't really had a lot of people play it in, I would say, at least a decade. First edition, second edition.
Mm-hmm.
But you've modified your game.
I have.
Was there any particular reason you changed things up?
One is because we were so used to VTM V5, and used to playing in that system and not some of the older systems. We wanted to modernize it up to essentially adopt some of the mechanics from V5 to bring into the game, so that we could have at least a better grasp on what we were doing. Well, I did read all of the books, and I do believe the system could have been adaptable, or we could have adapted to that system. I personally enjoyed bringing it up to a more V5-ish type of setting. And I like the way that it runs that way better because I don't like change. So if I have to adapt to something else, it takes me a long time and tears.
And tears? I mean, I know we're hard to work with sometimes, Milo, but come on, we don't drive you to tears all the time, do we?
No, not usually.
We don't talk about the spicy stuff we haven't done around today, do we?
No.
That was funny. For context, two of the Changelings are dating people.
Yeah.
It gets
It's messy. It's a fun messy. The fun messy.
It is a fun messy.
Wait, two of them?
Could you tell us a little bit about the two of them? Wait, there's more? Oh wait, we don't. Sims Harm. Yes, Sims Elemental.
He's not
Harm.
dating
And
one
at this
person.
point, the guy. Sim is the avatar.
Oh shit!
Here. He's got all the elementals.
Holy crap! That's
going on around him.
Ah.
Sim is the motherfucking avatar.
Oh boy, that makes sense.
I'm gonna call him Aang from now on. So, could you tell me and a few other people about what changes you've made to the game and what is your favorite change that you personally have made?
So, some of the changes that I made to it was I got rid of the morality tracker. Yeah, I got rid of that. Made the clarity more like humanity from V5. I scaled it with the weird. So that's the magic that the Changeling use. You always have to have at least one dot in weird or you wouldn't be a Changeling and wouldn't have access to your contracts, which are your powers. And I made that kind of a sliding scale. So if you have 6 clarity, you have 4 weird. If you have 4 clarity, you have 6 weird. So they go up and down together depending on how you gain those back. I updated all of the contracts. We updated the character sheets to reflect those. I got rid of more outdated terms and various other things. I updated all of the seeming blessing and curses and all of the kith blessings. And I updated some of the kiths as well. So I did a lot of work. And you said, what is my favorite changeling?
What's your favorite change that you've made? Yeah.
Change that I've made. Oh boy. My favorite change that I've made is definitely to the contracts. The updates on them. I made it so that every single elemental had their own contract rather than one general contract for all of them, so that their powers vary slightly based on the element that they are, because they're not all created equal. And I deeply enjoyed doing that. That was a lot of fun. So
you're saying that you've changed several contracts and what happens with them. You've also invented several of your own contracts. Could you name off a few at the top of your head?
The ones I invented myself,
Yeah.
Okay, so we have the contracts of blood, the contracts of binding, and the contracts of life and death.
They don't sound ominous.
Nope.
Can you go into a little bit of detail about them, or do you want to keep that a storyteller secret?
Okay, so a little bit of detail about them. Contracts of binding essentially alter pledges. That is entirely what they are for. They're to favor pledges to specific people or just outright create them. It is a true fae contract. Essentially, a changeling using this particular contract, should they get a hold of it, has more dire consequences than, say, a true fae does. The contracts of blood are all about divining through the blood or controlling through the blood in somebody's body. And the contracts of life and death are about killing people and bringing them back.
That just sounds delightful. I've had personal experience of seeing that happen, and needless to say, my character was both impressed and horrified at the exact same time.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned there the difference between a true fae contract and a changeling contract. What is the difference between a true fae contract and a changeling contract, and what would happen if a changeling was to get access to a true fae contract?
So the major difference is all changeling contracts are muted versions of the powers of the true fae. So it's a balance, as the true fae tend to be more powerful, and the power, the weird that the changeling get come directly from the true fae itself. So all of them are very dumbed down versions should they reflect. I have a specific character that does have contracts of blood, though it is specific to them as a changeling, so it is a much more muted version of what the true fae would possess. Being that of the contracts of blood, one of the major abilities is called Sanguine Puppet, which allows them to, if they have taken the blood of an individual, essentially turn them into a puppet using the blood within their body. The contracts of blood that this particular changeling has is their specialty. Do not have that ability at all. It doesn't go that powerful for them. And the consequence of a changeling getting a hold of one and using them, especially willy-nilly, is clarity. It requires a clarity check, using those contracts, forcing people to do things against their will. The way it harms anyone it's used against requires them to make a clarity check. Now, being that clarity is like humanity, if you reach 0 clarity, you essentially return to your fairy masters as you feel more in tune with Arcadia than you do with the mortal realm, and you are successfully out of the game.
That just sounds horrifying. Nobody wants to go back to their keepers. No one wants to go back to Arcadia.
Nope.
With first edition and second edition, there was a lot of controversy about the changing of certain lores, the adding and taking away of certain kiths and seemings. Have you implemented any of those changes into your game?
No, I've added more. I've added a lot more. I haven't taken anything away in terms of seemings and kiths. Mm-hmm. I like the freedom that the first edition had, where kind of anything you could think of had a seeming or a kith that it could be applied to, that the sky was the limit, and that the storyteller could even create more if they wanted it, and was in fact by many of the books or first edition books encouraged to create more seemings and kiths.
And with that, the obvious question is, what sort of seemings and kiths have you invented for your chronicle?
So the first two, the very first kith I ever created was called the Wildlings. And the Wildlings are beasts. They are always some form of insect, and they are forever children. They look like children always. They will die looking like children. That does not change no matter how old they are. The second kith I made that was new was the Children of the Hunt, which they have a specific master, which is the keeper, which is the master of the wild hunt. And that is the only way they can become that particular kith. It is also a beast seeming. And then I made a blood elemental, a decay spirit, which was an elemental. And then I have a couple that are unknown kiths and unknown seemings, as they don't fit into any particular one category.
Oh, so they're at least unknown for now, or
Mm-hmm.
that might be discovered later on during future episodes of Arcadia. Okay. Not making me nervous here at all. You know, that's how that works. If you were to choose a favorite seeming or kith that you personally have invented, or even just one that's already in game and has been written down, what would they be?
So, of the ones that are written down, the ice elementals are definitely some of my favorites. And of the ones I created, the Children of the Hunt are my favorites of those.
I like the Children of the Hunt too, but that's for personal reasons.
Giggity.
Giggity goo. There's also something in your game I've never seen, and that would be certain types of knights of courts. So summer knights, winter maidens, autumn wraiths, and spring flowers. Where did you come up with the idea for these special forces of changeling courts?
So pretty much the idea came from when I was reading actually the first edition book, when it was mentioning the courts. It did a very brief sentence. It's somewhere in there. Can't tell you the page. but a brief sentence that talked about the knights, and then it said, or whatever you want to call, whatever the court call their protectors. And I went, oh, cool. So I can make up different names for them. And the maidens came next. And I do believe that that idea came from a book I was reading. Not really sure which book. And the autumn wraiths were so easy because autumn is that time where everything is dying, and the veil between the realm of the dead and the land of the living becomes, thinner. So that one just
And Halloween.
Yep. And that one came pretty easily to me. And then the flowers, of course, is because spring is the representation of new growth, and flowers represent that. And so I picked that. And then, of course, summer nights is a joke. It's a play on words.
Mm-hmm. I know. I've noticed that myself. And if you were to choose to be a member of one of these protector groups, which protector group would you prefer yourself to be in? We're talking Milo. Not your character, you yourself.
Oh, okay, crap. See, that would beg the question of probably the race. I'd have to go with the autumn race. Oh, absolutely. I would rock that matte black armor.
As you've seen, I will do at some point too.
I know, looking awesome.
So let's move on to the actual chronicle art itself. Arcadia by Day. How did you come up with the name Arcadia by Day?
Originally, it was actually Arcadia by Night, going off of the same kind of formula of VTM, where it's the city by night. And we kind of just picked Arcadia as it is the realm of the Fae, because that's not where it takes place. The game does not take place in Arcadia. Now, some games could, if you really wanted to, though they'd be troubling, to say the least. Yep. But we've kind of just settled with Arcadia. And then we were talking about it. We being the collective, we tend to decide a lot of things together. And I was kind of just like, yeah, but none of it takes place at night. It's all during the day, because the only thing that takes place at night is the durances. And so or dreams, depending on what characters are doing. So we just settled on calling it Arcadia by Day, because it happens during the daytime hours.
That makes sense. A lot of people have no doubt going, what happened in San Diego? Why isn't San Diego by Day? Let's be honest, guys. Calling it Arcadia by Day is just far cooler. That's
has a better ring
just
to it.
San Diego by Day. It just sounds like a fucking tourist brochure. You know? Go to the monorail system. No, I'm okay. Thank you very much, sir. I want to avoid going to Arcadia. I want to go to the monorail system.
Use the monorail system rather than at the Arcadia.
Yeah, damn right. I go to the monorail system over Arcadia. I don't want to be hunted down by some jacked up hunter with a fucking musket. Well, thank you. I've seen Jumanji. I know how that happens.
Little do you know that all it takes is one bad ride on that monorail system to Arcadia. Don't fall asleep on the train. Anyways.
So it's just why I fucking need fucking train nightmares. Thanks.
I'm sorry.
Has there been a favorite moment in the Chronicle for you so far?
See, the problem is everybody comes up with really, really good moments. But as a storyteller, one of my personal favorites, because it absolutely threw me completely off because it was directed at one of my SPCs, was our other player, 3LC's character, Sim, saying to my true fae charlatan, some gods can be touched. And now she hates him. She hates the shit out of him for it. But it threw me off because I was just like, I don't even know how to respond to this right now. What do you say to that? Like, so that was a really beautiful moment.
If I remember correctly, it was Good Night, Simon.
It was,
wasn't it?
Sweet dreams, Garrett.
Yeah.
To Derek, and because that's Derek's true name, and then he turned and went, "Good night, Azalyn," which is her true name, and said it right in front of the guy she hates. The other really good moment, which was not captured on film, unfortunately, we had some technical difficulties during it, was Dane giving Savannah a kiss before going into the unsafe goblin market with Bro to find the true Fae.
Which turned out to be quite safe for Dan. Not so much for the person who's been there several times before. Which is always the way.
Now, you listened to the instructions, you didn't talk to anyone, you did notice quite a few true Fae.
Yes, and I kept my head down, I kept on bloody walking because I'm not stupid.
Hey, you look interesting. Oh, do I? No, not anymore. I'm just gonna go.
No, stop flirting with me. This is my no-no square. Go away, sir. If White Wolf or Renegade were to bring out a new edition of Changing the Lost, would you like to see perhaps even some of your stuff put into it?
I think it would be really cool to see some of my own stuff put into a game, just at all. It's that whole idea of like, if you see it, because, imitation is the greatest form of flattery. It's that whole thing of it feels good enough. You know what I mean? Because there's always that, does this work? Did I do a good job? Kind of anxiety that comes with making something or taking something and trying to twist it so that it fits a certain element you're trying to do. So yeah, I think it would be rather exciting to see something, but then again, it would depend on, I guess, what it was. Because one of the things, again, I'd like to see is more information on the true Fae, and more. I'd like to see them bring back the Kiths and Seemings. They took them out in the second edition, but I would like to see them kind of revitalize that too.
You said there that you would like to see more information on the true Fae.
Yeah.
Would you come up with a decent bit of lore from your own perspective and from your own study of Fae, actual Fae lore in our world? So we have obviously the Ansel, who is my future ex-wife. Let's be honest.
Got pretty hands.
I'm never gonna meet. She got pretty hands, but I am never meeting that character in person. I don't think.
I mean,
at least not yet.
You always can. She's always there.
Stop flirting with me. We have the seamstress, who has not just got pretty hands, but many of them.
Many hands.
Many hands. And the only other true Fae that has been mentioned in game is the Grindylow.
The Grindylow. Yep.
Where did the idea for these three true Fae come from?
So the Ansel is actually based off a story of a little fairy girl who comes down a chimney and speaks with a boy who didn't go to bed like his mommy told him and had a little encounter with her, but he was clever enough to get out of it. And I combined that with the legend of the Horned Women. And that is actually one of the lore pieces that's there. The Horned Women, there are always 13 of them. The number of horns they have is based on their strength. So the woman with 13 horns is the strongest. They cannot gain another horn if somebody has that position already, but they can lose their position and another can take it. So the Ansel is one-horned because she lost all of her powers when she was cast out of Arcadia. And so she is now the weakest, but as long as she draws breath, they can't have another horned woman. The Grindylow is actually based off of a fae named the Grindylow. It's a water goblin, basically. And the seamstress? The seamstress is a creation of mine from a while back. Basically, she's just a human woman's torso on a centipede body with, instead of legs, all her legs are other hands. So she's better at her craft.
Why is it every time you describe the seamstress, I get a shiver down my spine?
Because she's
like
gross.
From Madame Grave. She is gross. She's very nice, though, for obvious reasons, because she wants you to be her puppet, but still. Nope, it's still there.
And you forgot one. You forgot one. I did make another true Fae that you have kind of half encountered. You encountered the child of that true Fae, the Master of the Wild Hunt, the Gabriel.
Master of the Wild Hunt, of course. But I haven't personally run into them yet, considering I'm with the daughter of him, yes. I probably should have forgot. I probably should have mentioned, the keeper. How did I forget him? I've mentioned him several times, but I always skip his name because of the
Good
derangement.
question.
I never mention
Uh-huh.
his name out loud in case he comes.
Yep.
I don't want to have that sit-down dinner. I don't want that sit-down dinner. That's going to be
Mm-hmm.
awkward.
Exactly. Like, hey, sir, your daughter, we don't need to have this conversation.
And what was your inspiration behind the him?
The inspiration behind him was obviously the Wild Hunt, of course, which I based him more off of the original Wild Hunt rather than the lore of the Wild Hunt within the Changeling the Lost book. So all of his minions is not a good word, but that's what I'm going to say. Minions are some kind of dead looking or are actually dead. Their spirits, the changeling that are trapped by him are turned into dogs that look like they are rotting. His role as a punishment. It's a really good question how I came up with that, but I don't actually remember. But yeah, he's basically based the fact that in folklore, the writer, the actual master of the Wild Hunt, is actually considered to be Odin in some mythologies.
Yeah, I was actually about to ask you
Mhm.
there. When you say the original, do you mean the Scandinavian Wild Hunt or the Eastern European Wild Hunt? Because some stories are differing when it comes to the two, but they come from around the same time.
Yeah. I based it more on the Eastern European rather than the Scandinavian, but I definitely made him a big muscular dude. So, but yeah, because he's, yeah, the Gabriel.
I was going to say, but they're not a bunch of elves like in The Witcher.
No, 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 no. They are actually the spirits of the dead, and the ones that aren't the spirits of the dead are humans that were taken and changed into something to serve a purpose, which could be a ghost, and then you end up as a grave right.
I know, a ghost. Ooh.
Fine. Ah, ghost.
Boobies. I'm still getting that picture you sent me earlier on, Jesus. Now, if you were to have advice for anybody who wanted to start a Changeling game, what would it be?
My first thing is always just breathe. Read the books, but as you read them, understand that the lore can be changed to whatever you want it to be. Everything outlined in the books are guidelines, and trust your players. Get good information on their characters. Build the world, if you can, around a lot of the things that they want to see in it, SPCs, things of that nature, and make it the game that you and those around you want to see, not necessarily the game that's in the book.
And there are plenty of supplements out there that give examples of play styles and whatnot, but as you're saying, if you want to just go full ham, just make it up as you go along. That's why the golden rule is so important.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned there creating SPCs for your players.
Yep.
You've created a lot of SPCs and NPCs, especially within the last 2 weeks because of the big meeting that had to happen with the
Yep.
courts. Who is your favorite, I would say, alignment good SPC or NPC?
Alignment good SPC or NPC. I actually really, really enjoy Savannah. She's the only child of the hunt that I have. And I really like her because I like her attitude. She's fantastic.
She is. I don't feel forced in saying to that. There's no gun against my head. And if you were to choose an evil SPC NPC as a favorite, who would that be?
Well, my favorite villain, essentially, that I've created so far was Azamara.
Yeah.
She was the assassin for the Freehold, or for the Church of the Blessed. She gone now. So if I had to pick one that's still alive, Felix. He's one of the ones. Now he's kind of a forced villain. He's not necessarily doing it because he wants to, but not like Azamara was. But yeah, he would have to be my second choice since Azamara is up in flames.
Interesting. What happened to Azamara? I'm sure some people who are listening to this haven't really caught up because we do have several episodes of Arcadia by day. What was your thought process during that entire encounter?
So my thought process during that entire encounter, which was the encounter where when Ro, the wildling who helped Dane find the seamstress at the Goblin Market, because Ro has the ability to find the markets in the first place, got kidnapped or lost within the hedge. They went to go find her, and they found out that Azamara, a little boy named Alpha, and Jack had encountered Ro and then drew a true fae to them. So the entire time I was thinking about that encounter, and while I was creating it, I was like, there is no way that if the players encounter Azamara right now, they will be able to defeat her. So I was like, okay, well, being as she's such a threat, a true fae would try to eliminate her, subdue her somehow. So I had her busying herself with the true fae's minions so that she was preoccupied and getting damaged because she would be more amiable to thinking twice about attacking the player characters if she was already hurt. So I was like, perfect. Knowing how strong she is, she can do that while they save Ro, and then it won't be a problem. And then Sim turned around and burned her while she was weak and killed her while she was basically kicked her while she was down, which granted, more power to him, man, because I set up that encounter the way I set up that encounter. Like, I don't want anyone to feel bad about killing my SPCs, especially the bad ones. And so he saw his opportunity, he took it, and I was just like, no, like, do it. If you encountered her at her full strength because you let her live, she would not show you mercy.
So that brings me to a question about Azamara, the character themselves, because not much is known about her. Pretty much her entire past is shrouded in mystery, at least to in-character knowledge. I mean, I personally, don't believe she's fully dead because that bitch had some aces up her sleeves. But that's what I'm sure some people want to know, is that as a character, as Azamara was never brought into the head, she was never captured by a keeper, she was just essentially thrown into a church. How did she get that strong? What made her different to everybody else to be as much of a force behind the church as she was?
Azamara is a fetch spawn. So in one of the supplements, it talks about fetch children and fetch spawns. Now, it doesn't go into a lot of detail about them. It basically gives you some small snippets of information, and you can, again, build it up yourself, because that's the big thing about this game is they really encourage anyone crafting the game to make their own decisions about it. They'll give you rough guidelines, but they really want you to use your imagination to its full extent. And fetch spawns are the children of fetches, which fetches are what replace the changeling, take their place when they get abducted and live their lives or die or whatever. Not much is quote unquote known about the fetch spawns, but in my lore, they are future true fae. So if allowed to live long enough and allowed to, barring not being captured or anything like that or killed, they will eventually walk into the hedge, go to Arcadia and claim a place, and through the magic there, become a true fae. It's the only way true fae are born. Azamara was a future true fae, and she had gone past the time she should have been called. And the reason for that is she had linked her own humanity to the little boy and the other girl, Jack, who are fetch children, the opposite of the fetch spawns. But she was very, very strong because the fetch spawns have similar powers to the actual fetches, which are meant to and designed to combat their changeling counterparts. Killing your fetch should not be easy once your fetch becomes aware of you.
What makes a fetch so dangerous to a changeling? Is it because that the fetch has lived their life as they would have done, or they've changed certain parts of their life that would have happened, or is it because they are just as powerful as the changeling, and it's a Highlander route, there can only be one?
They are a reflection of the changeling. They are the same but opposite. So while a changeling in Arcadia might have, we'll use Sim as the example here. Sim when he was Arcadia's artistic ability was used to torture people. He was forced to craft torture devices and then use them and basically make artwork out of people, true Fae changelings, enemies of his keeper. And it twisted that artistic nature within him. Well, in the real world, his fetch lost all inspiration to do art at all, basically. His old shop was boarded up, closed. And it's not just that they are the reflection, but also that human laws govern changelings to a little bit of a higher extent. Well, they are more powerful than humans. Killing your fetch, you could have mortal authorities called on you, and killing a human very much, well, unlike VTM, is one of those clarity sins. So to fight off the human police, the mortal police, to free yourself after killing what they believe to be a normal person, you've committed murder. You would risk your clarity, which again would cause you to go back into the hedge and give up your life. On top of, as they become aware of you as a changeling after you come out of the hedge, they start to gain powers that, of course, reflect, again, bits of your own. If you are really good at punching, they become really good at dodging. If you are really strong, they are really stealthy.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. And as you were saying about the fetch spawns and how they become eventually true Fae, is there, I don't know, a certain sort of group of changeling that personally hunt down these fetch spawns before that can happen?
Most of the changeling don't know this information. The fetch children and the fetch spawns are a very rare phenomena that hardly ever crop up. And usually by the time it's realized, it's a tad too late. The only people that tend to have knowledge of them are antiquarians, changeling that have the ability to dig deep into the knowledge of Arcadia, as they once cataloged entire libraries and other such menial tasks. And they tend to just, that's just not knowledge, at least in my world, that is readily available. It is very, very hard to come by. So there's no specific hunting down of fetch spawns or children, but you can find groups of changeling known as Jack Catchums who hunt down fetches, actual fetches, for a price.
That's bloody terrifying. And so, for example, when it comes to fetch spawns and fetch children, I'm guessing you say it's not common knowledge, but true Fae can't breed in the same way you and me can, the same way changelings can't. Is that correct? So you think somewhere down the line, someone would go, why do these guys keep getting more fucking numbers? Where are they coming from?
Yep.
Unless they obviously don't know that. The keepers don't be fucking.
Well, the knowledge of Arcadia is oftentimes lost on the lost. They don't often remember their time. They have to be at least a year or more out of the hedge, safe back in the mortal world before some of those memories start to stick. And before they can start to recall their time in that place. And most of them do not wish to. So to sit there and dwell on the mating habits of these horrific creatures that tormented you usually isn't something that most changeling want to dwell on.
I mean, yeah, we've all heard some pretty horrific stories when it comes to what certain keepers made certain player characters do, for example, food and whatnot, giving them special abilities. We talk about the rabbits and the rabbit pies, for example. The rabbit beast seemings. Now, anyone listening to this, you can put your imagination to the test and think of what we mean when we say this keeper had 2 rabbit beast seemings and ate a lot of rabbit pies. So, use your imagination there, guys. When it comes to that sort of thing, do you think that you need to trust your players?
Yes, you very much. There needs to be a level of trust between players and storytellers. There needs to be enough trust that, covering these dark topics and even the lighthearted topics, that your players can come to you with anything and say, I have a problem, I was uncomfortable, or even during the game, I am uncomfortable. Because what you don't want is somebody sitting there thinking they can't say that to you, or you don't want your players, or you don't want necessarily, you want your players to trust that if you have to stop a scene or if you have to intervene or whatever, that your players need to trust you just as much as you trust your players, because you both need, everybody, both, I say both, not both, everybody needs to rely on each other. Not just because in game, not even in character. You need to be able to rely on each other so that you know you're keeping each other safe.
Which brings us to some fan questions.
Oh boy.
What was the most difficult aspect of Changeling to modernize, and how did you go about it?
The most difficult aspect of Changeling, I think, as a whole to modernize was essentially figuring out what needed to be tossed out and what needed to be kept, as there are some benefits to like the morality that would have been really beneficial. I mean, in ways it seems almost necessary, but to modernize it, it was kind of this is just going to overcomplicate this to a level it doesn't need to be overcomplicated. The weird was also really difficult to modernize. I had to figure out it took me a long time to figure out the sliding scale for that, because I was like, because everything was experience based. You could buy more weird or more clarity. And I was like, but they also reflected each other in the book, which is where confusion came in. Also the courts. A lot of it was very confusing. I tossed a lot of shit out to be like, this doesn't make sense. Out you go.
That makes total sense.
Again, contracts were the most fun. The contracts were the most fun to
modernize and spice up your own. So here's another one.
Mm-hmm.
What part of the existing changing the lore interested you the most? And what part interested you the least?
So the part that interested me the most was the Durances. I loved the way they are described. Now, again, I love dark fairy tales. I very much try to find and combine beauty and horror. The elements within horror that are beautiful and the elements that within beauty are horrifying. So this very much was a story I knew I wanted to tell. And the Durances reflected those ideas perfectly, because they are essentially what the Changeling endured that you explain through the dreams. They do not remember them upon waking, but it gets a little reflection of their time in Arcadia. That was my absolute favorite part. I kept that every single night when the Changeling go to sleep. I explain their Durances in the game, and it's an absolute... Boy, saying joy after a lot of the crap I just said makes me sound like a sociopath. So, oh dear. But yeah, I very much enjoy that part of it. And the part I liked the least in the old lore definitely had to be a lot, again, with the courts. It had to be a lot of the courts. They try to mash a lot of information together in a way that, for me personally, was very hard to comprehend. So I'll try to do a little bit of it, but with the courts, it's you feed off a specific type of the Changeling feed off an emotion to regain glamour. There's a couple ways they can do it, but for the most part, emotions is actually one of the ways you can do it. But for the most part, even with goblin fruit or dreams, you're taking an emotion. And your emotion was supposed to be based on your court, but then it's also how you're supposed to view the world after coming out of Arcadia, which I was like, this is just fucking confusing. So I did it based off of the emotions that you would like to consume instead. And that it wasn't even the most adequate way to do it, to be honest. But trying to smash what they were putting together, I felt like I was trying to put a square block into a triangular shaped hole, and I just couldn't do it. So I was like, we're just going to do something different here. And it was very, again, difficult for me, as well as because I found it confusing, I didn't like it. Like, I was just like, I hate all of this because I don't know what to do about it.
Yeah, I entirely get that. I mean, for example, I explained a while ago as to the reason Dean doesn't trust spiders. And that's because spiders feel no fear. And how can he trust something he can't feed off?
Yeah.
Like, I don't like it because you don't fear me. Why don't you fear me? It's a little small, like a creature. I go boo and you don't move. Stop staring at me with your 8 eyes.
8 eyes.
And are we ever going to witness a total party kill And have you come close?
So hopefully no total party kill. There's been at least one time that it came close. And how I handled that particular aspect is I went to my players, a couple of them, not the ones that kind of agreed to the bad stuff, but the other players, and was like, "Hey guys, are you okay with this?" Because I was having a struggle, because I was like, this whole situation is bad. It's gone so south. I do not want to have to kill my players, but some people put them into that situation. Other characters kind of put everyone into a bad position. And I was just like, it's kind of not fair to have to kill everybody because one person did a thing. So I went around and I asked and was like, "Hey, are you guys okay with this? Like, would you be comfortable with this? Because like, if not, I will jump through hoops to figure it out." And everyone said they were fine with it. So I set up the scene where a couple of things could happen. And that is where one of the times Azamara was introduced. And she went to go retrieve someone she cared about, Jack, one of the fetch children. And I anticipated pushback. There were several reasons I anticipated pushback, which, of course, for that particular game, that did not end up actually happening. They willingly gave Jack over to Azamara, which that's all she wanted, so she fucked right off. But had they tried to fight her at all, it would have been a total party kill. She would have killed all of them.
I like to trust in my dice sometimes, but sometimes you just gotta just go with the flow and see what the hell happens, because there are some enemies you just look at and go, no. I trust in the heart of the dice, but I am not Yugi.
Right.
And most of the times you've seen my roll, like the highest roll I've got so far is 15 on something that was just tracking, and I was like, holy shit, where'd that come from?
That was amazing.
That was more than the dice I used. I was very impressed. But we've definitely rounded out how you've changed and revitalized the game, which I don't think anyone listening to this is going to disagree with. You have. And I can tell you, as a player in Arcadia by day, I am having a fantastic time. There is not a single moment that I don't enjoy the game. And I have to get up at 5 in the morning to play this game. And when you get up in the morning, you have to go to work. And it's early. And you're like, fuck.
Yeah.
I have never woken up at 5 in the morning to go play Arcadia by day and went, fuck. I've never done that. I've got up and went, oh, coffee. Or what sort of shit we get into today. But I've never ever woken up in a foul mood. And that is definitely down to how you tell the story. Definitely down to how we all interact with each other. And it comes from it, in my own personal words, it comes from a place of trust and love for each and every member of our group that I think you need to have if you want to do a story like this.
Yep.
And on that note, one final question. Where do you see the future of Arcadia by Day going?
All right. I see the future of Arcadia by Day going in a good direction for the player characters. They have worked very hard, you included, to see to it that they've put themselves in a favorable position to fight the church. And while there are still other looming side plots and side quests, the seamstress is definitely going to talk to Dane again. And the Onsel still needs the hedge wand. Sim is still working on his touchstones issue of having encountered a true fae within her dreams. I think, at the very least, at this moment, that they stand a very good chance against the church and wrapping up Chronicle 1 on the note of bittersweet victory.
That's just joyous to hear that I get to play with Mrs. Hands again. But thanks,
She's
Milo.
lovely.
She is. She's
welcome.
a damn delight. And, I'm sure a lot of people are going to be very happy to hear this. Because, as I said, a lot of people are asking about how we and you have changed the game. Because we have. We've made it something special, and it's definitely coming back into light. We know, for example, in future there's going to be a lot more streams of Changing the Lost from other channels. And that's down to you. I will hear nothing else about it, but that's down to you. And I hope all those who are listening to this have enjoyed this little chat between myself and Milo. And we hope to see you in the future.
Yeah.
during our streams of Arcadia by day. We're even going to post at some point in the Figment Collective community Discord our sheets, the sheets that we have made for this game, the ones we have pretty much invented and updated to reflect the new standard for Chronicles of Darkness games and World of Darkness games. So if you want to grab and get some of those sheets for your own players in your own games, feel free to drop on by and download them. It'll cost you sweet fuck all, apart from a hello. And remember, guys, playing these games while it's dark is about having fun with people you love and trust.
Absolutely.
And welcome to the collective.
Welcome to the collective.
We'll see y'all later on.
Bye.
Have a good night, guys. Sweet dreams. I can't say it as good as you.
Sweet dreams.
Ooh.
You gotta deepen it. Just sweet dreams.
Ooh. See you later, guys. Bye.
Thanks for sticking with us. Remember, we don't offer refunds. You can check us out on YouTube and Spotify, as well as our Instagram under The Figment Collective. Welcome to Collective. We'll see you next time.